The crack echoed across the stable yard before Meghan understood what she'd done. Duke William collapsed, not gracefully, not slowly. He went down hard, both knees hitting cobblestone, a sound escaping his throat that was half gasp, half groan. The riding crop was still in her hand, still warm, still trembling. Oh God, no. 6 months of work, gone. Her future gone. Every estate in England would blacklist the stable hand who struck a duke between the legs. But worse than losing everything was watching the most powerful man in 3 counties crumple because of her. Your Grace, the words died. What apology existed for this? His face was bone-white, jaw locked, eyes squeezed shut. This was it, the guards, the humiliation, the end. But when Duke William finally looked up, he did the one thing Meghan never expected. He laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A real laugh, raw and slightly unhinged, the sound of a man whose carefully constructed world had just been shattered by accidental violence. Well, he gasped, voice strangled, that's certainly a first, Miss Hartley. And in that moment, Meghan saw something flicker across his face. Not anger, not outrage. Relief. The Duke of Ashworth, cold, untouchable, impossibly remote, looked relieved that someone had finally broken through his defenses, even if the method was catastrophic. What was he hiding that made pain feel like freedom? And why would this disaster become the beginning of something that would destroy them both, or save them? The answer would challenge everything about power, healing, and what happens when 2 people trapped in their own prisons accidentally find the key to each other's chains. Don't call the physician. Meghan froze. The Duke was still on his knees, still struggling to breathe, and he was giving her orders. Your Grace, you need. What I need is for the entire household not to know I was felled by a stable hand with a riding crop. His voice was strained but absolute. Help me to that hay bale, now. She shouldn't touch him. Touching a duke was unthinkable. But he was already reaching for her arm, using her to lever himself upright, and Meghan found herself supporting the weight of a man who should have had her arrested. The wasp, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean. I know. He collapsed onto the hay bale, breathing carefully. You have excellent reflexes, terrible aim. How long have you worked with horses? The question was absurd. He was injured, possibly seriously, and he wanted small talk. 8 months, Your Grace. Not here, I'd have noticed you. The comment hit strange. The Duke of Ashworth noticed no one. In 6 months at Hartwell Manor, he'd walked past her 100 times without a glance. He was a figure of rigid formality, always alone, always cold, always wrapped in aristocratic distance like armor. 6 months here, 2 at Lord Pemberton's before that. Something shifted in his expression. Pemberton dismissed half his staff last winter. The women first, regardless of skill. And you came here because your estate master said you valued competence over gender. Meghan studied him, confusion overriding fear. Why are you asking this? Why aren't you furious? William, she couldn't think of him as just the Duke anymore. Not after accidentally assaulting him. Looked at her with unsettling directness. I saw you with Tempest last week. Her heart jumped. You were watching. Everyone else gave up on that horse. Vicious, they said, untrainable, but you, he shifted, wincing. You treated him like he wasn't broken, like trauma deserved patience instead of punishment. He's not vicious, he's terrified. My brother's doing. Edward believed in breaking horses fast and thoroughly, domination over trust. The bitterness in William's voice was shocking. He broke everything that way, not just animals. The words hung heavy with implication. Meghan had heard nothing but praise for the late Duke Edward, the perfect heir, dead 5 years in a hunting accident. But William's tone suggested a different story. Tempest deserves better, she said carefully. So do most creatures that survive my family. William stood, testing his stability. His next words came fast, like he'd break if he hesitated. I'm giving you authority over Tempest's rehabilitation, full control. Whatever methods you need, you'll report to me weekly. I want to understand everything you're doing. Your Grace, I'm just... You see broken things and believe they can heal. That's rare, especially here. He moved toward the stable entrance, then stopped. Miss Hartley, you're not just going to teach me about horses. Then what? He turned back and the look on his face stopped her breath. Desperate, trapped, almost pleading. You're going to teach me how to undo 40 years of damage without destroying what's left of me. The words cracked something open. This wasn't the remote Duke of Ashworth. This was a man barely holding himself together, reaching for help in the only way his pride would allow. I don't understand, Meghan whispered. You will. William's smile was broken glass. First assessment is tomorrow. 7 a.m. Come prepared to explain everything about rehabilitating traumatized creatures. He disappeared into the manor, leaving Meghan standing in the stable yard with a riding crop in her hand, and the terrible realization that she'd just been recruited for something far more dangerous than horse training. That night she couldn't sleep. The Duke's face kept appearing, that flash of relief when the pain hit, like he'd been waiting years for something to finally break through. What kind of man welcomes agony as freedom? In the manor's east wing, William poured brandy with shaking hands and stared at his reflection. 40 years old, Duke for 5 years, dying inside for longer than he could remember. The blow had hurt, God, it had hurt. But for the first time in decades, he'd felt something real cut through the numbness. And the woman who'd accidentally struck him had looked at Tempest the way no one had ever looked at William, like damage didn't mean worthless. She'd seen a broken creature and believed it deserved healing. Tomorrow, he'd find out if she could see the same in him, or if he was already too far gone to save. He drained the glass and wondered which answer terrified him more. The first weekly assessment arrived in the form of a handwritten note delivered to Meghan's quarters, East Stable, 7 tomorrow morning. Come prepared to explain everything. Meghan barely slept. She spent the night organizing her thoughts, rehearsing explanations, trying to anticipate what a duke would want to know about horse rehabilitation. When she arrived at dawn, William was already there, dressed not in his usual aristocratic finery but in riding clothes that had seen actual use. Your Grace, she curtsied quickly. Dispense with the formality when we're working. He gestured to Tempest's stall, where the stallion watched them with wary eyes. Tell me what you've done this week. Meghan outlined her approach, establishing routine, reading the horse's body language, never forcing contact, building trust through consistency. William listened with an intensity that made her self-conscious, occasionally asking questions that revealed surprising knowledge about animal behavior. You're not just training him to obey, William observed. You're trying to restore his confidence. Yes, obedience without trust is just suppressed fear. It doesn't heal anything. It only teaches better concealment. William went very still. Say that again. Obedience without trust is suppressed fear. It doesn't heal anything. It only teaches better concealment. He repeated her words like they were a revelation. My God, that's what Edward did, not just to horses. Meghan waited, sensing something significant shifting beneath the surface. My brother was the heir from birth, William continued, his voice distant. Everything I did was measured against his example. Every failure was proof of my inadequacy. Every success was dismissed as luck or accident. He touched Tempest's stall door, not looking at Meghan. I learned to hide everything I felt, became so proficient at suppression that I forgot what I was suppressing. That sounds exhausting. It was survival. William finally met her eyes. Until Edward died and suddenly I inherited everything he'd spent his life being groomed for. The title, the responsibilities, the expectations. And everyone, my mother, the household, society, expected me to simply become him. But you're not him. No, I'm the second son who read philosophy while Edward learned estate management, who preferred solitude to social climbing, who never wanted any of this. The admission seemed to cost him. Do you know what the worst part is, Miss Hartley? Meghan shook her head. Sometimes I catch myself using his methods, demanding obedience, maintaining distance, building walls. He laughed bitterly. I've become the very thing I resented, and I didn't even notice it happening. The vulnerability in his confession struck Meghan silent. This wasn't the remote, untouchable Duke of Ashworth. This was a man who'd been forced into an identity that didn't fit, who'd spent years concealing his true self so thoroughly he'd lost track of where the performance ended and reality began. You noticed with Tempest, though, she said gently. You saw that domination wasn't working and you looked for another way. Only after watching you for weeks, wondering why a stable hand seemed more at peace than a duke. William's smile was self-deprecating. That's rather humbling, you know. Peace isn't about position, Your Grace. It's about alignment. Alignment with what? With who you actually are rather than who you're supposed to be. William absorbed this, then surprised her by entering Tempest's stall. The horse snorted nervously, retreating to the far corner. Meghan tensed, ready to intervene, but William simply stood still, hands visible, posture non-threatening. I understand, he murmured to the stallion. You learned that showing fear meant punishment, so you hid it behind aggression. And now someone's asking you to trust again, which feels impossible because the last time you trusted, you were broken. Tempest's ears flickered forward, tracking William's voice. But maybe, William continued, maybe we're both capable of learning new patterns. Maybe suppression isn't the only option. He glanced at Meghan. Though I suspect it requires something terrifying. What's that? Letting someone see the damage. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning beyond horse training. Meghan recognized the moment for what it was, an offering of trust from a man who'd learned to trust no one. The damage is where healing begins, she said quietly, but only if you stop treating it as something shameful to hide. William stepped back from Tempest's stall, his expression unreadable. These weekly assessments, I don't think they should be just about the horse anymore. Your Grace. William, when we're working, call me William. He straightened, and she saw him physically reassemble his ducal composure like armor. I want to understand what you're doing with Tempest, not just the techniques but the philosophy, the principles of rehabilitation. You want lessons in horse training. I want lessons in undoing the damage of suppression and control. His gray eyes held her steadily. Which, yes, we'll approach through horse training, because apparently I'm more comfortable discussing vulnerability through metaphor than directly. Meghan found herself smiling despite the strangeness of the situation. Most people are, Your Grace, William. There's something else. He hesitated, a crack in his certainty. My mother is hosting a house party next month. 70 guests, a week of social performance, all designed to parade me before eligible ladies like a prize stallion at auction. That sounds challenging. It sounds like hell. William's jaw tightened. I'll be expected to charm and court and pretend to enjoy the attention of women who see only my title. Women chosen by my mother because they'll maintain the family image she spent decades cultivating. And you want to avoid it. I want to survive it without losing what little authentic self I've managed to reclaim. He met her eyes with sudden urgency. Which is why I'm asking, will you help me prepare? I'm not sure what a stable hand can teach a duke about society parties. You can teach me what you've taught Tempest, how to be present without performing, how to maintain boundaries without building walls, how to, he struggled for words, how to be myself in a context designed to demand I be someone else. The request was absurd, inappropriate, crossed every line of class and propriety, Meghan should refuse immediately. Instead, she heard herself saying, 7 mornings a week then. We'll work with Tempest, and I'll share what I know about staying grounded under pressure. William's relief was palpable. Thank you. As he left the stable, Meghan wondered what she'd just agreed to. She was a commoner teaching a Duke lessons in authenticity through horse rehabilitation. It was either the beginning of something extraordinary or a catastrophic mistake in judgment. In the Manor's library, William poured himself another brandy and stared at his brother's portrait. Edward's painted eyes seemed to mock him. The perfect heir, the beloved son, the man who'd known exactly who he was supposed to be and had never questioned it. William had spent 5 years trying to fill Edward's shoes. Perhaps it was time to admit they'd never fit. Perhaps it was time to discover what shoes fit him instead. 3 weeks into their daily sessions, Meghan noticed the changes. Tempest was allowing brief touches without flinching. William was arriving at the stables with less rigid posture, occasionally smiling without it looking painful. And the boundary between horse training and personal transformation had dissolved entirely. Watch his breathing, Meghan instructed as William stood near Tempest's shoulder. When it shifts from deep to shallow, he's entering stress. That's when you pause and give space. William withdrew a step, and Tempest's breathing immediately steadied. How did you learn to read such subtle signals? My father. He trained horses for Lord Westbrook before. She paused, old grief surfacing. Before he was dismissed for objecting to abusive practices, we lost everything. Our home, his reputation, our security. He chose integrity over survival. He chose what was right over what was comfortable. It killed him eventually. The shame, the poverty, the sense of failure. Meghan's throat tightened. He died believing he destroyed our family through stubbornness. William turned to face her fully. But he taught you to see cruelty for what it is, to refuse participation in it regardless of cost. That's not stubbornness, that's moral courage. Moral courage that left us destitute. Would you prefer he'd taught you that power justifies abuse? That maintaining position matters more than treating creatures with dignity. William's intensity surprised her. Miss Hartley, Meghan, your father gave you something my family never provided. A foundation of principles that don't shift based on expedience. Meghan had never considered her father's choices from that angle. She'd spent years resenting the hardship his integrity had caused, never acknowledging the gift embedded in it. The house party is in 2 weeks, William said abruptly. I need to tell you something about what I'm facing. They settled on hay bales in Tempest's stall, the horse now comfortable enough with their presence to continue eating. William's hands twisted together, betraying his agitation. My mother has selected 3 candidates she considers appropriate. Lady Catherine Hartford, beautiful, accomplished, from an impeccable family. Miss Josephine Banks, wealthy American heiress, strategically valuable. And Lady Eleanor Ashford, distant cousin, keeps the bloodline pure. You've met them. I've performed for them, smiled on cue, made appropriate conversation, pretended interest in their practiced accomplishments. His voice was bleak. They're perfectly pleasant women who would make perfectly acceptable duchesses, and I feel absolutely nothing. Because they don't see you. Because I don't let them. How can anyone see me when I'm performing the role of eligible duke rather than being myself? William stood, packing. But here's the trap. If I drop the performance, they'll see the reality. A 40-year-old man who'd rather discuss philosophy than politics, who finds most social interaction exhausting, who has no idea how to be intimate with another person because he spent his entire life learning to hide. That's not weakness, William. That's the truth of who you are. The truth that makes me unmarriageable by their standards. Or, Meghan countered, the truth that attracts someone capable of genuine connection rather than strategic alliance. William stopped packing. Do you believe such a person exists in my world? I believe such people exist everywhere, but you have to risk being seen to find them. Like Tempest risking trust. Exactly like that. They fell into silence, watching the stallion. Meghan could feel William wrestling with something, tension radiating from him like heat. "There's another complication," he finally said. "My mother knows I've been spending time in the stables. She's suspicious of my interest in the horses, and in you." Meghan's stomach dropped. She thinks I'm avoiding my responsibilities by hiding with the help. She doesn't know about these sessions, but if she discovered I've been receiving what amounts to philosophical counsel from a stable hand. William's expression was apologetic. She'd dismiss you immediately and ensure you never worked at another estate in England. Then we should stop. No, the word came out sharp. These sessions are the only thing keeping me sane, but we need to be more careful. Your Grace, William, I can't be the reason you're estranged from your mother. You're not. Edward is. William's laugh was hollow. My mother spent 25 years investing in the perfect heir. When he died, she transferred all those expectations to me without adjusting for the fact that I'm a completely different person. She doesn't want me to be happy. She wants me to successfully impersonate her dead son. The bitterness in his voice was corrosive. Meghan recognized the pattern from her work with traumatized horses. The way repeated pressure in the same sensitive spot created damage that compounded over time. "What would happen if you told her the truth?" she asked. "That you're not Edward and never will be." "I tried once, after Edward's funeral." William's face went distant. She looked at me like I'd slapped her and said, "Your brother is barely cold and you're already making his death about your own inadequacies." I haven't tried again. Meghan's chest ached with recognition. She'd seen this before. People trapped in patterns that hurt them, too afraid of the consequences of change to risk breaking free. "Tempest bit me yesterday," she said quietly. William's attention snapped back. "You didn't mention, are you hurt?" "I'm fine." I startled him reaching for the halter and he reacted instinctively. She pulled up her sleeve, showing the bruise. "But here's what matters." He immediately retreated to the corner expecting punishment, because that's what he learned. React defensively, get hurt worse. "What did you do?" "I left the stall, gave him space, came back an hour later and continued as if nothing had happened." "You didn't punish him?" "No, because punishing a fear response only teaches better concealment. It doesn't address the underlying terror, it just drives it deeper." Meghan held William's gaze. "Your mother taught you that showing your true self results in punishment, so you learned perfect concealment. But William, you're not Tempest. You can choose to stop returning to that pattern." "Can I?" The question was raw. "When the entire structure of my life is built on that pattern, when everyone I'm supposed to satisfy demands the performance." "You can choose to risk the consequences of authenticity over the slow death of suppression." William sat heavily on the hay bale, his ducal composure crumbling. "I don't know how to be authentic anymore. I've been performing so long I've forgotten what's real." Meghan made a decision that defied every rule of propriety. She sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched, and spoke with quiet certainty. "You're real right now. In this stable, talking about your fear, acknowledging your exhaustion with the role. This is authentic William." She paused. "The question is whether you're willing to risk showing this version outside these walls." William turned to look at her, and Meghan saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Longing, terror, and desperate hope tangled together. "And if I show this version at the house party and everyone rejects it? Then you'll know they were never right for you anyway, and you'll have practiced being yourself in the most challenging environment possible." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple. It's terrifying. But William, you're already terrified maintaining the performance. At least fear in service of authenticity moves you toward freedom rather than deeper into the cage." William was silent for a long moment, processing. Finally, he nodded slowly. 2 weeks. I have 2 weeks to practice being myself. He met her eyes. Will you help me? Not just with principles, but practically. I need to know what authentic interaction looks like because I genuinely don't remember anymore. What do you mean? I mean, William struggled. Teach me how to have a real conversation, how to show interest without performing charm, how to maintain boundaries without building walls, how to be present rather than playing a role. It was the strangest request Meghan had ever received, but looking at William's face, stripped of ducal authority, vulnerable and uncertain, she understood what he was really asking. Teach me how to be human again. All right, she agreed, but it's going to be uncomfortable. William's smile was ghost of genuine humor. Meghan, I've been uncomfortable my entire life. At least this discomfort has purpose. The practice sessions evolved into something neither had anticipated. Stop, Meghan interrupted as William recounted a story about his time at Oxford. You just did it again. Did what? Edited yourself mid-sentence. You were about to say something honest, then pivoted to something more acceptable. She crossed her arms. This only works if you stop censoring. William's jaw tightened. The honest version makes me sound pathetic. Then say the pathetic version. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to help you practice being real. They were in the tack room now, their sessions having moved indoors as autumn rain made the stable yard impractical. Tempest was progressing remarkably, allowing full grooming, accepting a bridle, even permitting William to lead him around the paddock. The horse's rehabilitation had become a mirror for William's own unraveling. Fine, William's voice was clipped. At Oxford, I had exactly 2 friends. Everyone else tolerated me because I was Edward's brother, but they preferred him. He was charismatic, confident, the kind of man people gravitated toward naturally. I was the awkward younger brother who read too much and said the wrong things at parties. And how did that feel? Like being invisible while simultaneously on display. Like nothing I did mattered because I'd never measure up anyway. The words came faster now, pressure releasing. I threw myself into academics because it was the only arena where Edward couldn't outshine me. But even that became another performance. The brilliant scholar Duke, the philosophical aristocrat. Just another role to play. Meghan watched him pace, recognizing the pattern. This was what happened when suppressed truth finally found outlet. It flooded out, sometimes overwhelming. When did you last do something purely because you wanted to, not because it fit a role? She asked. William stopped moving. These sessions, coming to the stables every morning, for the first time in years I'm doing something entirely for myself. Then the house party is your test. Can you maintain that authenticity under maximum pressure? I don't know. He slumped against the wall, exhaustion evident. Part of me wants to cancel the entire thing, claim illness, dismiss the guests, avoid the whole situation. That's avoidance, not authenticity. I know, William rubbed his face. But Meghan, what if I try being myself and everyone finds me lacking? What if the authentic version of me is someone no one actually likes? The vulnerability in the question struck Meghan deeply. She'd been asking herself similar questions for years. If people knew how much she resented her father's choices, how bitter she sometimes felt about her circumstances, would they still see her as someone worthy of respect? I think, she said carefully, that people who only like you when you're performing were never really seeing you anyway. So their rejection wouldn't be of you, it would be of their own expectations. Intellectually, I understand that. Emotionally, it's terrifying. What terrifies you most? William was quiet for so long Meghan thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. That I'll discover I've wasted 40 years becoming someone I don't even recognize. That the real me, whoever that is so buried under layers of performance that he's irretrievable. He met her eyes. What if I can't find my way back? Meghan moved closer, impulse overriding propriety. William, you're finding your way back right now. Every honest thing you say, every moment you resist performing, that's you emerging. Or maybe it's just another performance. The authentic Duke performing authenticity. Stop it. The sharpness in Meghan's voice surprised them both. That's the voice that kept you trapped, the one that invalidates every genuine feeling, that dismisses truth as performance. That's not wisdom, William. That's the defense mechanism you developed to survive your family. William stared at her, something cracking in his expression. How do you know that? Because I do the same thing. Every time I start feeling proud of my work, I hear my mother's voice saying pride comes before a fall. Every time I want something for myself, I remember my father's sacrifice and feel guilty for wanting anything at all. Meghan's throat tightened. We've both learned to suppress our truth. We just use different methods. What's your method? Martyrdom. Telling myself that my suffering proves my virtue, that wanting anything more than survival is selfish. She laughed bitterly. I've been so focused on teaching you to break patterns that I haven't examined my own. The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. William stepped closer, his gray eyes searching her face. What do you want, Meghan? If you could have anything, regardless of whether it's selfish or appropriate or acceptable, what do you want? No one had ever asked her that. Not once in 33 years had anyone invited her to name her desires without qualification or justification. I want my own training facility, she heard herself say. Not just working for someone else's horses, my own program where I could develop rehabilitation methods, teach others, prove that compassion and consistency work better than domination. The words tumbled out. I want to wake up every day doing work that matters, not just surviving. I want to build something that would make my father proud while also being mine, not a continuation of his legacy but a creation of my own. That's not selfish, that's magnificent. It's impossible. I'd need capital, connections, a reputation beyond stable hand. Meghan shook her head. I'll spend my life working for people like you, and that's not a tragedy, it's just reality. What if it doesn't have to be? William. I'm serious. He moved closer still, intensity radiating from him. You've spent weeks teaching me that patterns can change, that suppressed truth can be reclaimed, that healing is possible. Why doesn't that apply to you? Because I'm not a duke. I don't have resources or options or. What you have is expertise, vision, and the courage to pursue genuine purpose despite obstacles. Those are considerably rarer than resources. William's voice dropped. Meghan, you've shown me how to imagine a different life. Let me help you imagine yours. The moment stretched, charged with possibility and danger. Meghan was acutely aware of how close they stood, how William's barriers had lowered, how her own defenses were crumbling. This isn't appropriate, she whispered. Nothing about these sessions is appropriate, but they're the realest thing in my life. Before Meghan could respond, footsteps echoed in the stable corridor. They sprang apart as Thomas, the head groom, appeared in the doorway. Your Grace, the Dowager Duchess requests your presence in the drawing room, immediately. William's entire demeanor shifted, shoulders back, expression neutral, ducal authority sliding into place like armor. Thank you, Thomas. Tell my mother I'll attend shortly. As Thomas departed, Meghan saw William's internal struggle. The authentic man who'd been emerging moments ago was disappearing behind the performance again. Don't, she said quietly. Don't what? Don't retreat completely. Yes, be the Duke for your mother, but remember who you actually are underneath. William paused at the door, then turned back. Meghan, what we were discussing, your training facility, your future, this conversation isn't finished. It doesn't matter. It matters more than anything else we've discussed, because you can't teach me to pursue authentic purpose while accepting suppression in your own life. He held her gaze. We're both going to practice being real, remember, That applies to dreams as much as conversations. He left and Meghan sank onto a tack trunk, her hands shaking. Something had shifted between them, crossed beyond instructor and student, beyond class boundaries, into territory she couldn't name but absolutely recognized. In the Manor's drawing room, the Dowager Duchess sat rigid in her chair, teacup untouched before her. "You've been spending considerable time in the stables, William. I've been overseeing Tempest's rehabilitation. You know this. I know you've been sequestering yourself with that girl when you should be preparing for the house party." Her voice was ice. "Lady Catherine, Miss Banks, and Lady Eleanor will arrive in 10 days. You will cease this distraction and focus on your actual responsibilities." "My actual responsibilities include ensuring the estate's horses receive proper care." "Your actual responsibility is securing the family's future through an appropriate marriage." The Dowager Duchess set down her teacup with deliberate precision. "I've indulged your eccentricities long enough, William. The house party will proceed, you will select a bride, and this chapter of your life will close." William felt the old pattern pulling at him, the instinct to acquiesce, to perform compliance, to bury his resistance beneath layers of dutiful submission. He'd been doing it for 40 years. It would be so easy to do it again. He thought of Meghan asking what terrified him most. He thought of his answer, discovering he'd wasted 40 years becoming someone unrecognizable. "No," he said quietly. His mother's face froze. "Excuse me." "I said no. The house party can proceed, the candidates can come. But Mother, I will not perform for them. I will not pretend interest I don't feel or continue impersonating Edward to satisfy your expectations." William's voice remained steady despite his racing heart. "I'm 40 years old. It's time I started living as myself rather than as your idealized version of your dead son." The silence that followed was arctic. The Dowager Duchess rose slowly, her posture rigid with fury. "How dare you speak to me this way? How dare you dishonor your brother's memory?" "I'm not dishonoring Edward. I'm acknowledging that I'm not him and never will be." William held his ground. "You want me to marry well, maintain the family reputation, continue the bloodline. I understand. But I will do those things if I do them, as William, not as Edward's replacement. That girl has poisoned your mind. That girl has helped me remember who I am." The Dowager Duchess's expression turned calculating. Then perhaps it's time she found employment elsewhere. William felt something snap inside him, the final thread tethering him to old patterns of submission and fear. "If you dismiss Meghan, I will cancel the house party, refuse all marriage candidates, and make it abundantly clear to society that the Duchess of Ashworth interferes destructively in her son's life." His voice was steel. "Your choice, Mother. Allow me the space to determine my own path, or watch me publicly reject everything you've planned." The Dowager Duchess stared at her son as if seeing a stranger. "You would humiliate this family over a servant." "I would protect someone who's shown me more genuine care in 6 weeks than I've received in 40 years within these walls." William's hands trembled, but his voice remained firm. "Miss Hartley stays. The house party proceeds. And Mother, you will treat her with respect, or you and I will have a very public reckoning about what respect actually means." He left before she could respond, his heart hammering against his ribs. He'd just drawn a line he could never uncross. And for the first time in his life, the terror of that boundary felt less powerful than the relief. The morning of the house party arrived with autumn rain and crushing anxiety. Meghan watched from the stable loft as carriages rolled up the Manor's drive, depositing elegantly dressed guests into William's world. Lady Catherine Hertford emerged first, ethereal in pale blue, moving with practiced grace. Miss Josephine Banks followed, radiating American confidence and conspicuous wealth. Lady Eleanor Ashford descended last, every inch the perfect aristocrat, her bloodline evident in her bearing. They were everything Meghan wasn't: refined, appropriate, belonging. You're torturing yourself watching them arrive." Meghan turned to find William behind her, dressed formally but somehow still carrying himself differently than he had weeks ago. Less rigid, more present. "Shouldn't you be greeting your guests, Your Grace?" "I will, but first I needed to tell you something." William joined her at the loft window. "Whatever happens this week, however I navigate the performance required, these morning sessions continue. You're not dismissed, forgotten, or replaced. William, those women are here for you. You should give them genuine consideration." "I will, but Meghan, the genuine version of me is the one that exists in our conversations, not the one performing for strategically chosen candidates." He paused. "I'm going to try something terrifying this week." "What's that?" "Being myself. Actually being myself, not just theorizing about it." William's voice held equal parts determination and fear. "I'm going to have real conversations, set honest boundaries, stop performing charm and see if authentic presence is enough. And if it's not, then I'll know these aren't my people." He met her eyes. "You taught me that suppressed fear doesn't heal anything, so I'm choosing fear in service of authenticity over fear in service of continued suppression. Your mother will be furious if you reject all three candidates." "My mother has been furious with me for being myself since the moment Edward died. Her anger isn't new, my willingness to stop being controlled by it is." William straightened his coat, armor sliding into place. "Wish me luck." "You don't need luck, you need to remember who you are." William's smile was genuine for the first time that morning. "Then I suppose I need you, because you're the only person who seems to actually know who that is." He descended the loft ladder, leaving Meghan with a tangle of emotions she couldn't untangle. Pride in his courage, fear for the consequences, and something else, something dangerous and inappropriate that she refused to name. The next 3 days were exquisite torture. Meghan couldn't avoid glimpses of the house party, guests strolling the grounds, laughter echoing from the terrace, the spectacle of William moving through society. But she also couldn't miss the differences from what she'd expected. Thomas reported it first. His Grace is being peculiar. Lady Catherine tried to engage him in small talk about the weather, and he asked her what she actually thought about the social expectation of meaningless conversation. She didn't know how to respond. By day 2, the household was buzzing. William had declined a hunting party to spend the morning in the library. He'd redirected a conversation about fashion to discuss the economic ethics of conspicuous consumption. He'd told Lady Eleanor, politely but directly, that he found bloodline-based matchmaking distasteful and historically dubious. "He's sabotaging himself," the housekeeper whispered to Meghan. "The Dowager Duchess looks ready to commit murder." But on day 3, something shifted. Meghan was working with Tempest when she heard voices approaching the stable. She looked up to find William leading Miss Josephine Banks toward the paddock, both dressed for riding. Miss Banks expressed interest in seeing Tempest's progress, William explained, his tone carefully neutral. "Meghan, would you demonstrate the current training stage?" It was a test. Meghan recognized it immediately. William establishing whether his authentic self could coexist with his ducal responsibilities, whether Meghan could be acknowledged in his public world or had to remain hidden. "Of course, Your Grace." She kept her voice professional, ignoring the way her heart hammered. For the next 20 minutes, Meghan demonstrated Tempest's rehabilitation while William and Josephine observed. The American heiress asked intelligent questions, showed genuine interest, and most surprisingly, complimented Meghan's techniques with apparent sincerity. "You've accomplished something remarkable," Josephine said as they prepared to leave. "Most trainers would have given up on a horse this damaged." "Most trainers don't believe damaged things deserve patient restoration," Meghan replied before she could stop herself. Josephine's eyes sharpened with interest. "Do you think that philosophy applies beyond horses, Miss Hartley?" The question hung, loaded between them. Meghan felt William's attention lock onto her. "I think, Miss Banks, that people and horses aren't so different. Both respond better to consistent compassion than to domination. Both deserve the chance to heal from their wounds rather than being discarded for showing damage. Even when that healing takes time and effort others might consider wasteful. Especially then, because the alternative, abandoning anything that requires patient care, creates a world where only the invulnerable survive, and nothing living is truly invulnerable." Josephine studied Meghan with new assessment, then turned to William. "Your Grace, I believe I understand your recent authenticity campaign better now." After they left, Meghan realized she was shaking. She'd just been examined by one of William's marriage prospects and had somehow passed some test she hadn't known she was taking. That evening, Thomas delivered a note to her quarters: "East Library, midnight, please come. W." Meghan knew she should refuse. Midnight meetings with the Duke crossed every line of propriety. But curiosity, and something deeper, drove her through the silent manor to the library's carved doors. William waited by the fire, still dressed formally but disheveled now, his hair disarrayed from anxious hands running through it. "You shouldn't have asked me here," Meghan said quietly. "If anyone discovers—" "I know, but I needed to tell you what happened tonight." William poured 2 glasses of sherry without asking, handing her one. "At dinner, my mother engineered the conversation to highlight each candidate's suitability: Lady Catherine's impeccable lineage, Lady Eleanor's compatible temperament, Josephine's strategic value. And you responded how?" "I told them the truth." William's laugh was slightly wild. "I said I appreciated their time but couldn't imagine marrying someone I didn't genuinely know. That I'd rather remain unmarried than enter a strategic alliance devoid of authentic connection. That I was 40 years old and finally learning to value truth over performance, and any future partnership would need to accommodate that reality." Meghan's breath caught. "William, that's professional suicide, I know." My mother left the table. Lady Catherine looked horrified. Lady Eleanor made hasty excuses. He drained his sherry. But Josephine stayed. "What?" After everyone scattered, Josephine asked to speak privately. "And Meghan, she told me something extraordinary." William set down his glass, his gray eyes intense. "She's been performing too. Her father arranged this visit, but she has no interest in marriage to an English duke. She wants to return to America and pursue medical research, scandalous for a woman of her position. She's been playing the suitable heiress while secretly planning escape." "She confided this to you?" "Because I'd shown her it was safe to be honest. Because my authenticity gave her permission to drop her own performance." William moved closer. "Don't you see what this means? When I stopped performing, I found someone real. Not a match, Josephine, and I want entirely different futures, but a genuine human connection. Proof that authenticity doesn't isolate, it attracts truth." Meghan's heart was racing now. "What are you saying, William?" "I'm saying you were right. About all of it. Suppression doesn't protect, it imprisons. Performance doesn't create connection, it prevents it. And the fear of being seen is nothing compared to the slow death of remaining hidden." He was very close now, close enough that Meghan could see the vulnerability and determination warring in his expression. "Meghan, these weeks with you have been the most real moments of my life. Not because of what you've taught me about horses, but because you've seen me, actually seen me, and haven't found me lacking. William, I'm a stable hand, you're a duke, this can't. I'm a man who spent 40 years trapped in a role that was killing him. You're a woman with expertise, vision, and moral courage my entire class lacks." His voice dropped. "I don't know what this is between us. I don't know if it's appropriate or sustainable or anything beyond 2 damaged people recognizing kindred wounds. But Meghan, I know it's real. And I'm done sacrificing real things for the sake of appearances." The fire crackled in the silence. Meghan knew she should leave, should maintain boundaries, should protect them both from the impossible situation forming between them. Instead, she asked the question that had been building for weeks. What do you want, William? Not what's appropriate or expected. What do you actually want? William's answer was quiet but absolute. I want to know what life feels like when I'm not performing. I want to build something meaningful instead of maintaining something inherited. I want to wake up every day as myself rather than as Edward's replacement. He paused. And I want to discover whether this thing I feel when I'm with you, this sense of being known, could be the foundation of something genuine rather than strategic. Meghan's defenses were crumbling. That's impossible. Why? Because I'm a duke and you're a commoner. Because society says people like us don't form partnerships. William's intensity burned through her objections. Meghan, you've spent weeks teaching me that patterns can change. Why doesn't that apply to the pattern of class-based limitations? Because the consequences fall differently on us. You're protected by your title. I'm vulnerable because of my position. Then I'll use my protection to shield you. William took her hands, the first time he deliberately touched her. Meghan, I'm not asking you to throw away everything for some romantic fantasy. I'm asking if you're willing to explore whether the connection we've found could evolve into something substantial. Whether two people who have both learned to suppress their truth could help each other live more authentically. Meghan looked at their joined hands, at William's face stripped of ducal authority, at the impossible possibility shimmering between them. This will destroy both our lives if it goes wrong, she whispered. Staying trapped in performance is destroying my life right now. At least this destruction would be in service of something real. Before Meghan could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor. They sprang apart as the library door opened and the Dowager Duchess stood framed in the doorway, her expression Arctic fury. "How dare you," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "How dare you defile your brother's legacy by carrying on with a servant like some common libertine?" The confrontation Meghan had dreaded had finally arrived, and it was worse than she'd imagined. "Mother, you will not speak about Miss Hartley that way." William's voice was steel, but Meghan could see the cost of his defiance, the tremor in his hands, the rigid set of his shoulders. "I will speak truth. This girl has manipulated you, distracted you from your responsibilities, poisoned your mind against suitable matches." "This woman," William interrupted, "has helped me remember who I am beneath 40 years of performance and suppression. If that feels like poison to you, perhaps you should examine what you've been feeding me all these years." The Dowager Duchess's face went white. "You ungrateful, after everything I've sacrificed, everything I've done to secure your position. Everything you've done to make me into Edward." William's composure cracked. "I'm sorry my brother died, Mother. I'm sorry you lost the son you actually wanted. But I cannot spend the rest of my life apologizing for being myself instead of being him." The raw pain in his voice echoed through the library. Meghan watched the Dowager Duchess process her son's words, saw something shift in the older woman's expression, not softening, but recognition of irrevocable change. "If you continue this association with this woman, you will face consequences." The Dowager's voice was ice. "Society will ostracize you. Your reputation will be damaged beyond repair. Every door will close." "Then they were never my doors to begin with." William straightened, and Meghan saw him make a choice in real time. "Mother, I'm 40 years old. I've spent my entire life seeking your approval, performing for your expectations, trying to earn love that was only ever conditional on my successful impersonation of Edward. I'm done. You're throwing away everything." "I'm reclaiming myself. There's a difference." William's voice gentled slightly. "I don't expect you to understand, but Mother, I'm giving you a choice. You can accept that I'm charting my own path, or you can maintain your fury and lose me entirely, but you cannot control me anymore." The Dowager Duchess looked between her son and Meghan, calculation and fury warring in her expression. Finally, she drew herself up with rigid dignity. "Then you've made your decision. Don't expect my support when this ends in scandal and ruin." She swept from the library, leaving William and Meghan in crackling silence. "William, this is catastrophic," Meghan began. "No, it's liberation." William turned to her, his face showing exhaustion and exhilaration mixed. "Meghan, I just chose myself over my mother's expectations for the first time in my life. Yes, there will be consequences, but for the first time I'm willing to face them." "Your mother will make good on her threats." "Probably, but here's what I realized tonight. I've been so afraid of losing society's approval that I never questioned whether that approval was worth having." William moved to the window, looking out at the dark grounds. "These people who will ostracize me for choosing authenticity over performance, were they ever actually my people? Or was I just so desperate for belonging that I accepted conditional tolerance as connection?" Meghan recognized the question. She'd asked herself similar things about the estates that had employed her, the social circles that had excluded her, the systems that had crushed her father's integrity. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now we make choices." William turned back to face her. "Meghan, I meant what I said. I want to explore whether this connection we found could become something substantial, but I won't pressure you into vulnerability that could destroy your life. You need to decide what you're willing to risk." The enormity of the choice pressed down on Meghan. Staying meant potential scandal, certain judgment, possibly losing everything she'd worked for. But leaving meant abandoning the first genuine connection she'd felt in years, the first time someone had seen her completely and valued what they found. "I need time," she said finally. "This isn't a decision I can make in crisis." "I understand. Take whatever time you need." William's smile was sad. "Though I should tell you, regardless of your decision about us, I'm not rescinding my offer regarding your training facility." Meghan's head snapped up. "What? Did you think I'd forgotten?" "Meghan, you have a gift for rehabilitation that deserves expression beyond working for people like me. I have resources sitting idle that could fund your vision." He held up a hand as she started to protest. "This isn't charity or manipulation. It's investment in something worthwhile. Whether you and I pursue anything personal or not, I believe in your work and want to support it." "William, I can't accept." "Why not? Because accepting help from a duke is somehow shameful. Because you've internalized the belief that struggle validates virtue." His voice was gentle but firm. "Meghan, you taught me that suppression doesn't heal anything. But you're suppressing your own dreams because some part of you believes you don't deserve support. That's the same pattern you helped me recognize." The accuracy of his observation stole her breath. Meghan had spent so long believing that her worth came from enduring hardship that the possibility of actual support felt like cheating somehow. "I don't know how to accept help," she admitted. "Neither did I. We'll learn together." William moved closer but didn't touch her, respecting the boundary she'd established. "Meghan, I'm going to do something tomorrow that will force both our hands. I'm going to address my house guests and make a public statement about my intentions." "What kind of statement?" "That I'm declining all current marriage prospects. That I'm restructuring my relationship with societal expectations. That I'm choosing to live authentically rather than strategically." He paused. "And that part of that authentic life includes supporting worthwhile endeavors, including a new equestrian rehabilitation facility to be run by someone with revolutionary training methods." Meghan's heart hammered. "You're going to make me public." "I'm going to make your work public. Whether you're willing to make our connection public is still entirely your choice." William's gray eyes held her steadily. "But Meghan, I won't hide you like something shameful. Either we explore this openly, accepting the consequences, or we don't explore it at all. I'm done with performance and concealment." The choice crystallized before her: safety through distance or risk through authenticity, the familiar prison of suppression or the terrifying freedom of being seen. Meghan thought of Tempest, who'd learned to hide his terror behind aggression until someone showed him that vulnerability didn't always mean punishment. She thought of her father, who'd chosen integrity over security and died believing he'd failed. She thought of William, who'd spent 40 years suffocating under the weight of others' expectations. And she thought of herself, 33 years old, talented and driven, who'd spent her entire life playing it safe and still ended up with nothing guaranteed. "All right," she heard herself say. "I'm in. Not because I'm certain this will work, but because I'm certain that hiding will destroy us both more slowly than risk ever could." William's relief was palpable. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified, but yes, I'm sure." Meghan managed a shaky smile. "Though if we're doing this, we need ground rules. I won't be your mistress or your scandal. If we're exploring connection, it's as equals working towards something genuine, not as duke and servant playing at romance." "Agreed, partners, not performance." William extended his hand. "Shall we shake on building something real together and accepting the consequences?" Meghan took his hand, feeling the rightness and terror of the moment intertwine. Partners in authenticity. God help us both. The next morning, the house party assembled for breakfast to find the Duke of Ashworth standing at the head of the table with unusual intensity. "Ladies, gentlemen, mother, I have an announcement." William's voice was steady despite his obvious nerves. "I've spent this week being honest about who I am beneath my title. Some of you have appreciated that honesty. Others have been uncomfortable with it. All of you deserve to know my intentions moving forward." The room went silent. Meghan watched from the doorway, her heart in her throat. "I'm declining all current marriage prospects," William continued. "Not because the ladies present are unsuitable, but because I'm unsuitable for strategic marriage. I've discovered that I'm only capable of authentic partnership, and that requires genuine connection rather than compatible bloodlines or strategic advantage." Lady Catherine's face flushed. Lady Eleanor looked relieved. Josephine Banks smiled knowingly. "Furthermore, I'm restructuring my priorities. The estate will continue to function, responsibilities will be met, but I will no longer sacrifice my well-being for the maintenance of appearances." William's gaze found his mother. "I'm 40 years old. It's time I started living as myself rather than as the role others expect me to play." The Dowager Duchess sat rigid, her expression unreadable. "Finally, I'm pleased to announce the establishment of a new venture. Thanks to consultation with Miss Meghan Hartley, who many of you have seen working with our horses, I'll be funding a rehabilitation facility for traumatized animals. Miss Hartley will direct the program, developing innovative training methods based on compassion rather than domination." Whispers rippled through the assembled guests. Meghan felt dozens of eyes turn toward her, judgment and curiosity mixed. "I anticipate some of you will find this announcement shocking or inappropriate," William concluded. "That's your prerogative, but I'm no longer living my life in service of others' comfort. I'm living it in service of authentic purpose. Those who can accept that are welcome to remain friends. Those who can't, I wish you well." He sat down and chaos erupted. Guests arguing, the Dowager Duchess white-faced and silent, servants whispering frantically. But through it all, William's eyes found Meghan's across the room, and he smiled. Not the ducal performance she'd first encountered, but genuine, vulnerable, real. They'd made their choice. The consequences would come. But for the first time in either of their lives, they'd chosen authenticity over safety. And somehow, that felt like the truest victory either had ever known. 3 months later, Meghan stood in the paddock of Hartley Rehabilitation Stables, her stables, watching Tempest move freely across the field. The stallion who'd once hidden terror behind aggression now approached humans with cautious curiosity, his trauma healing incrementally through patient care. Behind her, William emerged from the newly constructed training facility, architectural plans rolled under his arm. "The expansion looks feasible," he announced. "We could accommodate 15 more horses by spring. We need to hire additional trainers first. I want people who understand the philosophy, not just the techniques." Agreed, though I'd argue the philosophy is the technique. William joined her at the fence, their shoulders touching comfortably. How's the new arrival settling? Frightened but responsive. Reminds me of another damaged creature who learned to trust again. Which one, me or Tempest? Both, Meghan smiled. You've come far from the Duke who collapsed in a stable yard. You've come far from the stable hand who accidentally changed my life. William's voice softened. Meghan, there's something I want to ask you. She turned to face him, recognizing the nervous energy radiating from him. These 3 months have been extraordinary, building this facility, working together, discovering what partnership actually means. William took her hands. I know we agreed to take things slowly, to let connection develop naturally rather than forcing it. But Meghan, I'm 40 years old and I finally know what I want. I want a partnership built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and genuine connection. I want to wake up every day working towards something meaningful with someone I actually know and admire. I want to stop hiding and start building a life that's authentically mine, ours. Meghan's heart raced. William, what are you saying? I'm saying that society's opinion about class and propriety doesn't matter to me anymore. What matters is finding someone who sees me completely and chooses me anyway. Someone who challenges me to be better while accepting who I am. He smiled. I'm saying that you're that person, Meghan, and I'm asking if you'd consider making this partnership permanent. Not as Duke and commoner, but as two people who found their way out of suppression together and want to keep choosing authenticity side by side. Tears pricked Meghan's eyes. You're asking me to marry you. I'm asking you to build a life with me. Marriage, partnership, whatever form allows us both to be fully ourselves while supporting each other's growth. William's voice was steady despite his obvious vulnerability. I'm not offering you a title or position. I'm offering you myself, imperfect, still learning, sometimes struggling but committed to truth over performance. Is that enough? Meghan thought of the journey that had brought them here, the accidental blow that had started everything, the weeks of mutual unraveling, the terrifying choice to risk authenticity over safety, the slow building of something neither had known was possible. It's more than enough, she said quietly. Yes, William. Yes to partnership, to building something real, to choosing each other despite the complications. Yes to all of it. William's smile transformed his face, pure relief and joy without a trace of ducal performance. He pulled her close, and Meghan felt the rightness of choosing risk over suppression, connection over isolation, authentic purpose over strategic positioning. They'd both been broken by the expectations of their worlds, but in the breaking, they'd found each other. And in choosing to heal together, they discovered that the most powerful transformations often begin with our most vulnerable moments. In the paddock, Tempest whinnied softly, as if approving their choice. Some patterns, once broken, created space for extraordinary new possibilities. And so, what began with a single disastrous moment in a stable, an accident born of fear and instinct, became the spark that shattered a lifetime of silence, suppression, and inherited chains. A Duke who had spent 40 years performing learned what it meant to live. A woman who had been told her place was invisible discovered her worth was undeniable. And two broken souls proved that healing doesn't come from power, titles, or obedience. It comes from courage, the courage to be seen. But this is not the end. Because authenticity always demands a price. Society never forgives quietly. And love that defies class, legacy, and expectation is never allowed to survive unchallenged. If this story moved you, if you believe love should be real, dangerous, and worth the risk, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to this channel for more powerful Victorian-era romances filled with forbidden love, emotional depth, and life-altering choices. Like this video to support stories where courage defeats cruelty. Comment below, was William right to defy everything for authenticity, or was the cost too high? And if you want the next story like this, the next scandal, the next love that dares to break the rules. Stay with me, because on this channel, love is never safe, but it is always unforgettable. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one. Bye for now.